Senator Mark Daly. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Lasker Hirla, and I'd like to thank the Minister for coming into the House. This month sees the end of the 1916 commemorations, but next year the centenary of commemorations commences again with the anniversary of the death of Thomas Ashe, who of course was born in Lisbole in County Kerry, who was involved in the 1916 Rising, who was tried on the same day as Eamon de Valera, was sentenced to death, and that sentence was commuted to penal servitude. And of course he was on hunger strike with another Kerryman, Thomas Austin Stack, and while on hunger strike he was forcibly fed. While we celebrate and commemorate the bravery of the men of 1916 and indeed Thomas Ashe in 2017, the anniversary is relevant because of the world in which we live in today, in the fact that the forcible feeding of prisoners goes on to this day, most notably in Guantanamo Bay. So while we mark the death of Thomas Ashe, we must also highlight the fact that the death and that he endured and the punishment he received, where he was 50 hours on a cold prison cell floor in a weakened condition and then subject to forced feeding, is a human rights abuse that actually happens in our world today. And that is a part of the reason we must highlight the injustices that happen today, even though we are commemorating an event that happened 100 years ago. But my question to the Minister is, what is the government doing in relation to commemorate this date, and not only commemorate this date, but highlight the issues of human rights and the rights of prisoners and the abuses that take place by countries that we are great friends of, but that does not mean that we will not criticise them when they are wrong. And when the United States engages in the form of punishment that it does in relation to prisoners, we must not be silent in relation to those issues and the rights of prisoners, no matter what the issues that they are in prison for. And I look forward to hearing what the government are doing in relation to the commemoration of the death of Thomas Ashe. Thank you, Cahir.
Thank you, Senator. Minister.
I'd like to thank Senator Daly for putting down this commencement topic, and I'm taking this on behalf of Minister Heather Humphreys, who unfortunately cannot attend. On Easter Monday of this year, the 28th of March, a state ceremony took place in Ashbourne, County Meath, to remember Commandant Thomas Ashe and all of those who gave their lives arising for the events of the Battle of Ashbourne. This is one of a number of formal state ceremonies, ceremonial events to take place around the country this year to reflect the special significance of key regional locations in the events of 1916 Rising, and to honour and remember those who fought and those who died. And I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the assistance of Meath County Council and Fingal County Council in supporting this very special commemoration. Some of the most significant volunteer action outside of Dublin took place at Rathcross, Ashbourne, under the leadership of Thomas Ashe, Richard Mulcahy and Frank Lawless. 13 men in total lost their lives in Ashbourne on the 28th of April 1916. Commandant Thomas Ashe was tried by court-martial, and his death sentence was commuted to penal servitude for life, and he died in September 1917. This year we have remembered and reflected upon the ultimate sacrifice made by Ashe and all of those who gave their lives so that Ireland's dream of self-determination could become a reality. My department is currently considering how the centenary of the death of Thomas Ashe should be appropriately marked, and is being assisted by the guidance and advice of the expert advisory group on commemorations in these deliberations. The 1916 centenary commemorations were inclusive, respectful and measured, and sought to strengthen peace and reconciliation on the island of Ireland. The Island 2016 Centenary Programme met with widespread support across the political, academic and community sectors. It has engaged our communities at home and abroad in an unprecedented way, and the benefits at community level, and indeed nationally, cannot be underestimated. The inclusive nature of the programme has enabled citizens to really examine our history and has encouraged them to consider the future of their communities. It gave people scope to think about the events of 1916 and the legacy in a way that is personal and meaningful to each individual. The Government will continue to mark significant events throughout the decade of centenaries, and the State's commemorative programme will be based on the inclusive, open and consultative approach that has worked so well this year. At all times, the Government has been supported in its plans by the guidance and advice of the Expert Advisory Group on Commemorations and the Oireachtas All-Party Consultation Group on Commemorations. The Expert Group is currently considering the issue of guidance around the approach to the second half of the decade of centenaries. The 25th of September 2017 marks the centenary of the death of Commandant Thomas Ashe. Next year we'll also remember the Battle of Nazines, and we will also commemorate the death of Francis Ledwidge in the Battle of Ypres on the 31st of July. In 2018 we will mark the end of the First World War and the general election of 1918, and then move to commemorate the First Dáil in January 2019. Commemorating the period of the War of Independence and Civil War will present its own challenges. However, I strongly believe the same open and honest approach which we use for this year's successful commemorations, which allowed all narratives to be heard, will ensure that we will be able to reflect appropriately on all of the major historical events as they unfolded. In terms of funding for commemorations, the Department is currently considering the funding breakdown for commemorations in 2017 in the context of finalising the commemorative programme for next year.
Thank you very much, Minister. Senator.
I suppose for the benefit of the Minister, and I know you're only reading the answer, the question was the need for the Minister to outline the Government's plans to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the death of Thomas Ashe, and what is the budget allocated for these commemorations. And the last three lines were, in terms of funding for commemorations, the Department is currently considering the funding breakdown. So there was no answer to the question, and it's only 9 months to go. The reply also talks about the Oireachtas All-Party Consultation Group on commemorations, but that group has not met since January this year. So I think, in light of the fact that there's only 9 months to go, and again, Minister, I thank you for coming into the House, and I know you're only getting the reply that you were given, and that's the only one you can give me, but in light of the fact that it is only 9 months away, we would have hoped in this House that we would have got an answer to the question. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you, Senator. Minister.
Thanks, Chairman. A week is a long time in politics, so 9 months is an awful long time in issues like this. Minister Humphreys is currently considering the state's commemorative programme for the second half of the decade of centenary, as I said, and has been supported by that group. So, I mean, I'll ask her why that the all-party Oireachtas group hasn't met since January. But I think, although you haven't stated, I'm sure you agree that the celebrations and the commemorations for the last year have been excellent. They've received cross-party and community support, and I think that has to be acknowledged as well. Minister also indicates that the Thomas Ashe Centenary Committee and others are also discussing their plans to commemorate the significant this significant event next year in Ashe's birthplace of Lisbon in County Kerry. You're probably involved with that yourself, Senator, and also in Meath, Dublin and abroad, and the Department would be happy to engage with relevant groups and through relevant local authorities and third-level institutions as to how the centenary of the death of Thomas Ashe might be appropriately commemorated next year. The inclusive, respectful and measured approach which characterised this year's centenary commemorations will continue to shape the state's commemorative programme for the remainder of the decade, and the close collaboration and engagement between government departments and other stakeholders will continue so that significant events and themes for commemoration over the next 5 years are marked with respect, sensitivity and openness. And I'm confident that the centenary of Thomas Ashe's death will be acknowledged, and I will again bring to the Minister's attention your concerns about the all-party committee not having met and the issues regarding the budget outlay for that event.